Over the next few sessions, we're going to be talking about managing network services. And in order to talk about network services, we need to talk about the basics of these services. So now we're going to talk about ports, protocols, and services. Now, network communication in general depends upon several things, including, of course, network card, protocol stack you've got installed on the system, and a dozen other things. But those are basically the essentials, the hardware things, and some of the OS things. What we want to talk about is the fundamentals of the communication itself. Now, as I said, this consists of several elements, including the ports, such as TCP and UDP ports, the protocols themselves, such as TCP, UDP, IP, and so forth, and then the services that reside in those protocols, such as HTTP, the World Wide Web Service, FTP, the File Transfer Protocol, DNS, the Domain Name Service, Secure Shell, and so forth, and there are many other services out there. Now, in Unix, we configure all of these elements, all these components, through configuration files, and the various services and components that deal with network communication use these configuration files to provide them information to help this communication happen. Now, we're going to look at some of these configuration files over the next several sessions. But the first two in particular that we'll look at are the etc services and etc protocols. And these are important files for a couple of reasons. Let's go ahead and take a look at them, and I'll explain why they're important. The two basic files we'll look at first include etc services and etc protocols. Now, both of these files are important because other configuration files use the information in them in order to configure services. Let's take a look at etc protocols first. Now, this is where most of the protocols found in different RFCs are assigned, and basically what you have is a list of protocols. You have their protocol number and their abbreviation, and then a comment as to what the protocol is and what it does. So you've got things like IGMP, ICMP, Internet Control Message Protocol, for example. That's the protocol type 1, protocol type 2. You've got TCP, of course, one of the big ones. That's protocol type 6, and it shows that it's the Transmission Control Protocol. So this is actually a very easy file to get around in, and you can actually add your own protocol numbers and so forth in there. It may or may not be a good idea, so unless there's something really important that you need to change in here, you really don't need to mess with this file too much. It occasionally may be updated from the internet, but usually it probably won't be. This file again provides protocol number, and a short description of each protocol. Now, if we go over to the etc services, we see that some of the same information is contained in there. Now, some of this information basically gives us what the well-known port numbers are and some other information as well. For example, we've got the Echo protocol. It's on port 7, it uses TCP, and it also uses UDP. You can find various protocols in here, and again, this is from RFC. You may want to occasionally edit this file, although you likely won't, in order to add a specific protocol in there, maybe a proprietary protocol or something unique you're using on the network. The reason this file is important is this is where INetD and some other services take protocol information from. For example, in the rc.d directory, we have various services and so forth, and in the rc.conf file, we have various services. These services come directly from this file. In other words, if you need to add weird service or something that's not conventional, you would add it in this file. Only then could you be able to use it in rc.conf and add it to the rc.d directory and use it in inetd.conf. So this is a pretty comprehensive list, and notice we have some of the more popular ones in here. Telnet, port 23, TCP and UDP, SMTP, port 25, of course. All kinds of protocols in here, just about everything you could probably think of. So the etc services and etc protocols files are very important because they provide basic building blocks, basic configuration for other files that we're going to go over in a later session, and for other services as well. So it's important to keep them intact and occasionally make sure they're updated and make sure that everything is okay with these files. In other words, don't allow anyone to go through and randomly change them or comment things out or delete them. Make sure they stay fairly intact.